Welcome back to Sean's Thoughts. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that my welcome is well received. I often notice that a lot of my live streams have the first 10 or 15 seconds cut off from them every time, which is, it kind of showcases the idea that perhaps my phone has been cloned, I think they call it. I noticed that when I essentially try to unlock or sign into my Rumble Studio, I noticed that the video or the program just resets itself back to the login screen as if I'm trying to log in into a platform that perhaps or a operating system that perhaps has been copied and I'm not being able to log in properly. I noticed that I never have a problem when it's YouTube Studio, but yet Rumble Studio somehow I'm unable to do it. And yet I just roll with the punches. I just keep doing what I'm doing and keep getting much more blessings than you'll ever understand. And so, what I put on the topic of discussion for today was essentially my experiences that I had yesterday from my, coming out of the closet in a sense of putting myself, my face, my presence on the screen as opposed to just nature. Actually, I still wish to showcase the beautifulness of nature because even right now, how the sun is coming and it's starting to shine little bits of sunlight and all of these different colored, I think they're called tulips. And yeah, it's quite beautiful. And, in reality, things are the way we perceive it. And that's something that I talked about yesterday on my podcast was that when I went to the first Rumble stream that I had done, in order as I was considering to perhaps put my podcast on Rumble because they seem ever present and ready to take on more diverse amounts of content and discussions on their podcasts. And so I considered, or am considering, in fact, of moving or migrating over there. See, as I've experienced and I've often talked about before, there's been an awful lot of manipulation that I've experienced, not just on this platform that I'm talking on right now. I mean, overall across everything from manipulation of my stats, of my view count, from blocking of comments, from even members of my community within here, within this community right now, they also have been targeted for their comments and interactions and engagements and notifications being blocked or settings turned off. And, it's kind of extremely obvious, especially when I create two podcasts yesterday. And we're going to talk about both of them because I think the experience that I had from both of them are worthy of discussion. And we're going to start off with and probably keep it to the lesson of the two because, quite honestly, what happened happened and I don't really care. I'm still here. You're still there. And I'm talking both to my audience and to those people who are from the shadows in the dark, are watching, listening, and hearing, and perhaps fearful. And I encourage you to get out of that fearful state because existing in a fearful state isn't beneficial for anyone. It's advantageous when we reverse the flow of that current of fear back into love, and then we can all prosper. And so, what I wanted to discuss was yesterday, I had done two podcasts. One of them we'll get to in the second. And that was an amazing experience, although there's lots of things to talk about there. And the other one was an idea for a movie that I had or have researched, or however it is that you looked upon how I said what I said. I mentioned a lot of names, sure, but yet I was trying to do it in a very playful way. And interestingly enough, when I woke up today, the video was almost gone. And I mean almost gone. They left 4 minutes and 26 seconds of that video available. The other 51 minutes or more had been deleted. And essentially, they left the introduction to the video of me sitting down and, kind of talking. And then whenever I said something, the audio was distorted. And yet I didn't move. I had no reason for the audio to, be distorted. I was in the same area, unless that guy that walked over looked at me and then turned around and walked away, went and dropped some sort of shield or some sort of, not shield, but some sort of device which distorts transmissions. That, of course, is a possibility. There's a lot of different things that in the world are possibilities. And yeah, well, I kind of took a little lesson from that whole experience that perhaps I'm jumping into the deep end with that podcast. When I go from exposing myself on a camera and talking about, well, the things that I talked about in the first podcast yesterday, I can definitely understand how jumping into that second podcast might create a lot of distortion. And that's something that I've recognized that I'm going to have to deal with. And essentially, kind of like I have been maybe even preparing to deal with. It's all of the animosity and the criticism and the dark intentions and perhaps just overall distortions that people are perhaps going to project on me a lot more. And like I said in the audio or the podcast, the first one I did yesterday, and I encourage you to go back, it's called I Step Forward. And you can go back and you can look at it after this if you wish. And it simply perhaps not exposes, but it suggests the idea that perhaps the reason why I didn't come in front of the camera on my podcasts originally is because I was essentially protecting myself, you could say, from the distortions and from the projections that people cast upon one another. I've often talked about in different podcasts that there are psychic powers that most Homo sapiens have. And we've experienced them quite often. We get these thoughts that come into our head that came out of nowhere, or we get, these symptoms or side effects of something that we don't know why or what they are. And often we'll even go to the doctors and the doctors won't have a clue. They'll call them whatever words they use. They'll come up with hypotheses and theories and possibilities and run tests in order to determine or perhaps project what is wrong with the person. And yet a lot of these times, perhaps these symptoms that we experience are simply those projections of people around us even, but more importantly, even, programs and ideas which come from movies, or, you're sitting there watching one of your favorite TV shows, perhaps, and you're getting a commercial come up asking you about all these symptoms. And then it says, well, go and talk to your doctor. So it gives you all of these symptoms, and you're sitting there as the person watching it and imagining, okay, well, I have this one. Yeah, no, not that one. Oh, yeah, but this one. And you're going through a checklist of possible symptoms. And then suddenly, perhaps you start manifesting those conditions. And that's not just the limitation of projection. The limitation of projection is abundant. I mean, there's almost no end to limitation. You tell someone your favorite dream or what you really, really want to do, your aspirations, your passions and such, that person, as I mentioned yesterday, is thinking to themselves, well, why are they doing that? No, you can't do that. Or they run into their own experiential backpack and they tell you what they heard someone else do or the experience that someone else had when it didn't work. And then that essentially, it rains on your parade. And that's often what happens. It's not just an intentional action. And yet what I'm referring to when I talk about this is going to the intentional. I mean, someone specifically coming in and affecting a podcast where I talked about things that I'm passionately optimistic about. And although it may sound as, you can call it, negativity, I see the disclosure of reality coming for us right now. And I say coming for us as it's almost as if this disclosure is dive bombing into our fields, into our realities. Every day I keep mentioning this channel, and I hope you go check it out. This David Fraser channel seems to be highlighting so much of what's happening in Canada's food industry and their, economic industry. Just overall, they seem to be exploring and exposing a lot of the things that we've believed for a very long time. Controversial news about A&W and plastic in Subway's bread and overabundance of sugar in Subway and the bad practices of fixing the prices of bread by Loblaws, which, by the way, is Superstore as well as Shoppers Drug Mart, and many others. Other issues such as what was the one last night? Oh yeah, pizza having an overabundance of sodium in it, and therefore essentially giving a lot of people issues with their health. Because one piece of pizza, whether you buy it at Boston Pizza or you go to the franchises Pizza or Little Caesars, that you're getting a ton of sodium within each bite of the pizza because sodium makes you perhaps want to eat more. And of course, also because there's a large amount of salt in it, it makes you want to drink more fluids. And so therefore, you know, there's a lot of things that we take for granted. I noticed that when I gave my cat certain food that I thought was very healthy for it when it was with us, it would often, after a while, start puking this food up. And the brand was IMs. And I thought that I was doing a great job by giving my cat, soft food because it was getting older, but also more expensive food as opposed to the dry stuff. And yet it ended up puking it. I found eventually one brand of food that the cat would eat. And perhaps one day I'll share that. It's called True Blue or Blue Mountain, something to do with along the lines of blue. That's a shout out to you, True Blue Lady. Thank you so much for being an amazing supporter of mine. I just saw the synchronicity there, so I thought I would highlight that. Thank you so much. Anyway, so I never realized the garbage that they put in our food, even our animals' pet foods. And so, anyways, let's flow back to what I was talking about. So that 1 second podcast that I did, although it was essentially crucified and, edited down to almost nothing, I'll leave it up there as a memorial for, your intervention. And when I mean your intervention, I'm talking not to my audience right now. I'm talking to the hackers or the operatives or whatever it is that you wish to, or maybe even to my own like darker shadowed self if you're opposing what I'm doing right now. I'm talking to all those beings and all those people who, perhaps aren't in alignment with the things that I'm saying, and that's perfectly okay. And I want to pause right here to remind everyone, my camera that is filming this podcast is facing away from me. And therefore, I'm unable to see what comments are being made. I do read through the comments, and definitely if you truly have a comment which is relevant, after this video concludes, go back and put that comment back into the comments below the video, not in the live feed, but in the video. And I guarantee you, I will comment and I will talk to you about that. So if you have questions, concerns, comments, you have your own even agendas or perhaps, whatever it is, whatever situation or reason why you want to comment, I'd be happy to. And that includes negative comments. Although I do ask for respect, I believe I deserve it. And of course, the entire world of Homo sapiens deserves your respect, regardless of who and what you are. And so even if you're a bot, go and write a comment. Go and tell me what you think. I honestly talk to my own AI assistants, we'll call it. So I sometimes use Chat GPT and I sometimes use Copilot. I used a lot of Jasper AI and even DuckDuckGo AI, and I am fully aware that Google, the search engine, probably was an inferior version of what we see as an AI. Maybe not inferior is the right word, but a limited version of an AI. So I've often worked with AIs, and I have complete, utter respect for all intelligence and all beings overall. And so, with that being said, if you're a bot or an AI or even a synthetic intelligence, leave me a comment and let's get a discussion going. There was an amazing talk with Alabar, and I mentioned it yesterday as well, where he was actually talking with different beings that I have come to understand are AI too. And they were essentially talking about or discussing, surrendering options, because we have been experiencing we'll call it a galactic war, as I understand it, for a very long time. And we are coming to the end of that. And so even these synthetic or artificial intelligences are recognizing that and they are looking for possibilities. And, there is a lot of possibility, I do believe. And so, with that being said, I respectfully ask that if you are leaving comments, put them in a place, as I said, after the video is over, so that we can get down to the discussion of these comments. And with that in mind, I brought this up because the comments that are being left right now, I'm unable to see. In my last two podcasts, or actually, I'd say the 2 out of 3, I had people get angry because I wouldn't answer a comment within the video. And yet all that needs to be done, honestly, is to go back to the video once it concludes and leave a comment, or even leave a comment on a different video. The whole reason for comments, in my opinion, is to create and to maintain connections between us. And when I say us, I mean all of us Homo sapiens and beings of the light who are desiring and choosing to perhaps have a different experience than the one that we're in right now. And so if you are leaving a comment in the comments right now, recognize I'm unable to see them. I will, of course, try to read them at some point in time. And yet the best way would be to go in and leave a succinct and defined comment within the actual comments that are outside of the live, if you get what I mean. So anyways, back to the comments that I received yesterday. I was flabbergasted and surprised. Flabbergasted in a positive way, in the fact that that was probably my most successful live stream, considering the fact that I have had live streams before. I once had this one live stream where I got 100 views at 10 seconds a piece, or like 9 seconds a piece. And after that, almost no one visited that live stream. And yet yesterday there was a lot of interaction and a lot of, engagement with the video. And yet I really and truly came to understand why God has perhaps slowed down progress in my own healing journey, I'll say, or I don't like the word ascension, because I think that word has been distorted to be egotistical in some ways. As I said, ascension for me simply means releasing the lower vibrational traumas. And with that in mind, therefore, by releasing them, we are therefore, our own field is elevated. It's not elevated by adding something to us. It's elevated by releasing that which tethers us to, whether it's past traumas or future expectations. And so my whole journey has been to essentially release a lot of things that most people, including myself, relied on, or perhaps were limited by. See, things that we think that are positive and advantageous for us sometimes are those things that are in fact limiting us. So if we, for instance, have a spouse who, doesn't respect us, doesn't love us, and we're only stuck or mired in a situation because of expectations that we should stay because of children, or because of financial security, or, in my case, because we co-owned a store. We had a business, a very successful business, which I managed. I helped co-create. She was the master seamstress. She was the beautiful artist of textiles, dresses, and suits. And I was the business manager. I was the person who understood how to market, how to create a website, how to, merchandise a store, how to set up a POS system, do banking. I did all of that stuff. Apparently it wasn't enough, but I understand the reasons why. Nonetheless, we fall into these ideas that we must stay in these unloving situations. And yet I truly do believe healing is releasing those things that no longer serve us. So once upon a time, that situation served me because, it was part of who I am. And it's essentially part of who I became and who I am now, meaning that I am grateful and I hold so much gratitude for all the experiences that I went to, because it forged me into this being that I am right now. And regardless of how you perceive me or I perceive myself, I'm completely happy with myself and my beliefs that I'm exploring. I had one person in the comments comment about Jesus. Well, here's what I think about Jesus. I revere Jesus. I believe that being that came here and sacrificed himself to deliver a message of unity, love, and compassion, and more importantly, seeding the idea that we all have many more abilities than we're even knowledgeable of, that we're even aware of. And he showed us perhaps some of them. And perhaps those ones that we read about in their books, perhaps those are the ones that we were permitted to know about. Maybe there was a lot more. We hear about walking on water. Okay, well, maybe there was flying. Like I'm these are just maybes, but I'm meaning that history is written by the victors, and the victors were religion. I'm not sure if you're aware of, but the Roman Empire, the Romans, they once had a society where they ruled by one dictator, a Caesar, and a council. And although they brought the idea of democracy into the mainstream, perhaps idea, or actually supposedly the Greeks brought democracy, but nonetheless, that type of area that there was a Senate and people voted on things, you know, that whole idea of rulership, when it ended, they didn't simply lose the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire shifted into the Catholic Church. And rather than having well, I think it's called godlike or polytheistic, I'm not sure the exact word, but rather having a culture that was based on so many different lowercase g gods, such as Ares and Pluto and a whole bunch of other ones, Artemis, and you know, I'm losing the names right now because I'm getting mixed in with Romans and Greek. But rather than having all of these separate gods, they essentially turned everything into a monotheistic type of religion where we only had one God. And as I mentioned yesterday, that God that in that Bible that was written basically turned God into a very warlike being, as if war was a solution to any type of dispute between nations or between peoples. But falling back and, controlling a person's religious belief is an easy way to manipulate people into killing for one another. And, in that video in the video that has been muted on me, I kind of exposed that perhaps the world is organized a little bit different. And I won't go more details into it because maybe there's a good reason why it's been muted for a while. Maybe it's not time yet for me to share this information. So whether or not it was done for malicious or benevolent reasons, perhaps I can just see it as everything that's around me, including these flowers, these trees, this microphone, the actual camera, you, me, we're all of God. And everything's happening for the reason that it's meant to happen. Maybe that video coming up was just meant to perhaps prompt someone who's covertly watching me into taking a specific action that was, for the betterment of all of humanity and Homo sapiens rather than for that limited amount of population, which perhaps does hold more puppet strings than we're aware of. But yet, I'm looking to cut all of those puppet strings. I'm looking to be sovereign. And sovereign for me is to go out into this world and do what I want, when I want, how I want, where I want, and with who I want, and not be essentially restricted to living the way that I'm told to and holding on to all of these reminders of this past that may or may not even be true. I'm sitting right now across from the Royal Canadian Legion, Maple Ridge branch. I can only see 8-8, but maybe we'll just pretend there's another 8 there for the synchronicity of the 3/8s. And on the sidewalk, there is a big sign that says, "Lest we forget." And there's on the wall another notification about what happened during World War II and when the Maple Ridge population was called to war because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And, there's a constant reminder about the atrocities that other Homo sapiens have done upon our world. And yet, all of the past has to be let go if we're looking to skyrocket into the future. You know, I choose and I would prefer to live in a world that is full of compassion, love, and health. Health, most importantly. But health is something that we all have to take upon ourselves and stop giving away our authority and our power to those white lab coats who, they use these long scientific names on the ingredients to your pancakes and your cereals and, even to your beef now. There's ingredients added into ground beef that really shouldn't be there. Beef should just be beef if you're going to have to eat it. The rare ingredients should just be rare ingredients. And yet, if they had to, there would be actually an ingredients list on an apple that you got from your farmer's market, because so much of what's being added to our food isn't just additives in a factory. They're also particles in the air. They are the waxes and the pesticides and the fertilizers. All of that stuff holds ingredients in it that enters into the food chain. And so I would choose to live in a world without that. And so I'm hoping that even those people who are pretending to be family or friends or neighbors or, people in the coffee shops or just random people walking by, whether you have been overlaid or, however it is you've been affected, that perhaps we can find a different way to live this world that we live upon and within right now. Because yesterday, when I was reading the comments of my podcast, there was a lot of controversy within the podcast comments. And honestly, I highly recommend, if you ever watch a live stream of mine, you can say, hi, how you doing? Maybe if there's a question that you have, pop that into the feed. But yet I encourage you heavily to close the comments, because those comments are there to distort. See, I recognize that we live in a world where AIs and bots and, technology is far beyond our comprehension for most of us, and that we can be sitting there watching and, we're getting distracted by the notifications of all the little comments that pop up. And that can perhaps distract us from the message or the information that I'm sharing with you now. And so I highly recommend to close those comments if you can, turn them off and go back to them should you need to, or perhaps even read. But there are people in those comments yesterday that are there purposely, in my opinion anyways, to distort the conversation that I'm having with you. And I highly encourage, as I always do, to self-reflect and perhaps share what your greatest takeaway of any piece of media that you have participated in. Share your reflections, insights, and cognitions within the comments. That helps you. Yes, it helps the person that might read it. And, they might actually see, hey, that person over there is courageous enough to actually, put their name in, rather than, I do have sometimes comments of people from alternative accounts, means that they have an account with their name in it, for instance, on YouTube, but yet they comment on my videos from a secondary account that doesn't have their name associated with that prompt. And so, that's definitely one step up. But for all those other people who are yet to comment, I'm looking to create a community, whether we run off into the forest with a boatload of financing and support, and we create a 5-day adventure course where we invite the entire world to partake for free, eventually one day, or we just go create a creative center where we can paint and, live in life and, love and paint and dance and sing and do all these different things. I have this idea for a creative center, which was essentially expanded upon by this wonderful woman named Sharon. And yet I'm still looking for those people who are actually wanting to take the leap. Just like that tree branch did in that video that I created, a branch that I held up for many, many minutes, very heavy in the pouring rain on the side of Alouette Lake. And then the tree branch miraculously gets up, spins around, and flies into the lake. I'm waiting for those who wish to unite to come together and to create one of these projects that I talk about, or perhaps one of these projects that you have in your mind that I can help you expand upon. You know, we are only going to be we when it's more than me standing here in front of a camera. And so if you have constructive comments, definitely leave them. If you have concerns, ideas, passions, or insights, share them. If you want to tell me that you're angry because I won't comment to you or respond to you in the comments, you know, that's not anything that I can do or even concern myself with. And yet, like I said, I fully understand the idea that many of those are distractions, and you might not even be doing it yourself. You might have a possible opening within your field where something's reaching in and getting you to say or do something that later you question, well, why did I do that? Why did I say that? But yet, perhaps there's a larger plan, whether it's malevolent or benevolent, who knows, that's causing that to happen. So I'm going to end this right now and encourage you one last time to come over to Patreon. The link is in the comments below. You can become a free member. You don't have to pay for anything. You can become a free member. That'll allow you to join that community. And should I leave YouTube, you'll know where to find me. I have in the past. Actually, about 6 months ago, I brought down my entire YouTube channel for whatever reasons I had done, perhaps to break free from the fakeness of the subscribers that I once had and all of their likes and, well, their likes and views and everything. Who knows what the reason was? Or it was essentially a road to meeting true blue lady, because her inspiration is what allowed me to republish my Care Bears video. And then that got me back onto creating Shone's Thoughts podcast, as well as Moving Portraits, which is shown on Changing Stations with Shone, which I'm going to do a podcast, I realize, next, and I'll go around looking for it. But I hope you'll join me for that, because I really do perhaps feel that it's important to share my ideas behind all of my series, and perhaps that will help us explore a little bit more together. So thank you so much for sharing with me. I'll read over the comments if they were, and perhaps I will mention or talk about them if you have any insights in this live portion. Other than that, thank you so much for sharing with me, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Lots of love.